Hello boys and girls, and welcome to a new episode of Unity 2D tutorials for beginners. In this section we're talking about the interaction system. In the previous video we set up the base script for the interaction system where we set the input and the layer. In this episode we're going to talk about the item setup. Let's go. As you can see, we have ourselves the basic interaction system in here on the fox or on our character. What we're going to do next is we're going to define this dummy object that we did in the last episode. Right now it's just an empty object with features that gives it an item, parameters or values. So what am I going to do? I'm going to first explain what the item is, what is it going to be, how does it interact with the interaction system, and all its ins and outs that we're going to build in this and the next videos. An item is basically a game object in a game that has a collider and parameters, and those parameters, they give the item its own values, like whether it's a pickup item, examine item, or a custom trigger. I'm going to talk about these three types of items because they're the most common ones in all the games. The pickup item is where you pick up anything that could be like a cherry, a gun, a sword, and those items, they have their own type of pickables. Like for example, a cherry, it's a consumable, you can eat it, where a gun is equipable, so you can equip it or dequip it as much as you want. And the last one will be static. Static is like I could say newsletter, where you can pick it up, you cannot eat it, you cannot use it, you cannot equip it, you can just examine it. That's for the pickable items. The second one is examinable items. Examinable item is basically stuff that you can examine throughout the game. For example, there's a picture you want to look at, or a nightstand, or a crack in the wall, or actually the door itself. It doesn't matter. And the last one is the optional part of each item. It's called custom trigger event, and that one will speak in details when it comes to that video. But what it does is it has a dynamic Unity event from which you can trigger something outside of that script, of the item script. I'm going to give a small example and hope it actually wraps around your head. Let's say you're in a horror game and running in a tunnel where at the end of the tunnel the door is closed, right? So you have to go back to the back end of the tunnel, the other end, and at the back end of the tunnel there's a shining object on the floor. You come close to it, it's a key, right? So you pick up the item, but you want to trigger some kind of a custom event. Like whenever you pick up the item, the door in front of you is going to blast open and a monster will start chasing you, so you have to run away. So that small event where after picking up that key is called a custom event. I want to enable another script. I want to play a sound. I want to enable a game object. I want to disable another object. I want to do multiple things. So that's called custom event. So with this we have a broad idea of what the item is. What we're going to do is we're going to build the basic script of an item. So let's start by going to the script folder, yes, and let's build item. Yeah, I don't know why this opens up by default. Let it load. Okay, so as I said, I explained what does the item do, right? But I'm going to explain right now what are the technical components of each item. So each item has to have collider, right? And specifically trigger collider, as we explained in the previous episode. The second thing is interaction type. These are the basic stuff that we're gonna implement in this video, and when we enhance the item, we're gonna add more stuff. The trigger is gonna just give the object, the triggering parameters that can allow the player to intersect with it. type in which we'll define whether it's a pickable, examine, or a custom event trigger. So what we're going to do, we're going to start by adding a trigger. And one thing about this stuff is we're not going to create a preset item, right? Like you can bring your own assets. You can say, right, I want to create a newsletter, right? Or let's say, like I want to create this weird shape, right? I don't want to make a chair, right? I want to make something different. I want to make a door. I want to make it a chair. I want to make a table. You know, it all depends how you want. So we're gonna make the script dynamic. What that means is we're gonna add a 2D sprite, and then inside the 2D sprite we're gonna append the item object, and that item object is gonna add all the required components that makes that static sprite into a dynamic item. Let's start with the first thing. An item has a collider, right? So let's say I have this thing, sprite, and I want to make this, let's say, this weird thing. I don't know what this is. So right now this is just a static game object with a sprite. In order to make it more dynamic, we have to add what I mentioned before are the trigger and the layer. And there's a way of doing this stuff. We can use the custom editor, but that one is slightly more advanced. So we're going to use something called reset function. Before we hit the reset function, we're going to have to add something at the top of the item class called required component. What this does is it makes sure that whenever we add the script to a specific object, it adds up that component. So we write required component and type of box collider. I'm gonna go with a box collider because it's more generic. You can have your own spherical collider, but I like box more. It's more generic. You can edit it as much as you want. So we have this thing set in here, which means whenever we add this item, whenever we add this script to an object, it's gonna add box collider. So if we come here, we have this empty sprite, like empty object without nothing, just sprite. So if we add the item, it's gonna add the box collider by default, and it's gonna take the shape of the object, like the dimensions, which is cool, right? The second thing is the item should not be non-trigger. This should be enabled by default, because if this is not trigger, we're gonna have a collision system. We need a trigger system. Look what's gonna happen. We actually cannot pass it. So in order to actually interact with it, we have to intersect. So I have to convert this to a trigger. So in order to do this, but we don't want to do this thing where we have to click on this every time we add it. So we're going to make it via the script. And you can see it, whenever I delete this, it says this item is dependent on, sorry, this component is dependent on the item. So let's delete this stuff, and let's talk about the reset script, the reset method. So we write reset. Reset, what it does, it's a script that, it's a method that gets called in the editor only, and it's used mainly for setting the default values of the component of the object. And it says here, like reset to default values. So what we can do here is we're going to go get component collider 2D is trigger equals true. So with this, so if you're confused why did I write collider 2D instead of box collider, basically box collider is type of collider 2D. So whether you have a circle, capsule, box, this one calls the 2D collider itself. And what we're doing here, we're enabling it, making it true. So let's go and check it out again. Let it load. So if I add this here, it adds the box collider and right away makes it trigger. So with this way we can relieve ourselves from clicking this button again, so it actually sets the value to trigger. So that's amazing. We've added this thing. The second thing we have to do is the interaction type. What we're going to do this one is by creating an enum, right? Enum is, if you're not familiar with it, you can explain it in simple words. Enum is a list of alphanumerical objects, right? And each of them has an identifier. like any array. It has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We use it to actually like differentiate types of stuff. So we're gonna go here. We're gonna go with type. Oh no, wait. I think I have to make it interaction type. No. So we write enum, open the curly brackets. Actually, let's make it like this. Curly brackets. It's a good practice to have the first value as none always, or you can have it your own default value, but I use none. And the second one will be, as we explained, it's going to be pick up, examine. That's it. The third piece, which I mentioned before, is custom trigger. The custom trigger is not the it's not the main character of the object. It's an optional. It's a supplement to the object itself. Like I can pick up an object without triggering anything else, but I want sometimes to trigger something, so I can enable that thing optionally. We'll talk about that thing in the next couple of videos. So we have this here, and we have this thing in here. So we have ourselves an initial item object. What we have missing is the interaction script, the interaction method itself. So whenever we click E, we want to do something. So what we have to do, we have to make this as a public interact object. Before we start with here, we have to, we have to make this void. Before we start, we have to make a public. We define the enum, but we have to actually choose it, interaction type. Let's call it, I'm gonna go with type right away. What? Oh wait, should be public. Yep, should be public. I forget. I put the enum inside the scope of this item because it relates to it. If I put it outside, everybody can use it. So we can use it only inside the item. So we can go with, it goes like item dot interaction type. See? Good. So whenever we click E, we have to do something in here. So before we actually decide what we want to do, we have to detect which type of item is it, right? So we can go with the default if else. But for more dynamic usage, if you have more than 2, 3, even 4 or 5 and plus conditions, it's better to use switch. And switch, we just write the word switch, and we append to it the input of whatever one used. So we have type, curly brackets, and then we have to do something called cases. So we write case and space, and then we have the condition, right? Like if this type is equals interaction type dot pickup, we do double dots, and we do break. So each case has to have a break. So what we do is like if it's pickup, let's go debug.log, pick up, and then let's copy and paste this in here, and let's name this examine. So examine. So we got ourselves covered with 2 pieces. Each switch has to have what's it called, like just like an exit, right? Like if none of these stuff happened, we have to have an exit plan, and that one is by writing default break. What that means is like as simple as you're saying if type is this, else if type is this, else do this. So with this, we can write here, we write null item. This is just for us to know if we actually forgot to assign a type in here. Because if it's pickup, examine, have this. If it's none, it's going to say none, null item. So we're doing good in here. What we need to do is, we need to go back in here. Since we added this item script in this object, it gave it this trigger thing and the type. The last thing we need to do before we proceed with the testing is we need to set the layer of this one also. So what we need to do is in here we go make layer game object that layer equals, we have to get the number of it. It's 10, male equals 10. You have to know that this thing gets called whenever the script is added. So let's remove it, move this. If we add this here, everything is set up. We have this item layer, box trigger, and the script itself. So let's make this as pickup, alright? And let's make another object. Nope, that's not it. Pickup item. And let's make another sprite and have it. Okay, let's go with this tiny bush, and let's put it in here on left side, and let's add the item. And as we see, everything is set up properly, and it has its own collider. Let's make it examine. Let's call it examine item. Let's save the scene, and let's go and start our testing. Oh, I forgot one important thing. So we have set up the items, and we've set up the interaction system. So we have to set up the link between the interaction system and the item itself. So if we go here, we're detecting if we're touching an item, and then we're detecting if we're clicking a button. So we have to do some sort of a link between this script and whatever item that we're intersecting with. One of the simplest way is caching that object whenever we detect. So what we can do here, we can go here, we can create cached trigger object, and we can go public game object detected object. That's good. So this one is by default null, and as soon as we detect here an object, we have to assign that in there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say this if detected object. Actually, you know what, it's not that important. So what we can do is we're going to make it more sophisticated. We're going to add is detected and assign this to it, right? And then what we're going to do is if is detected, we're going to have this overlap. Oh no, I did the wrong thing. Oh no, sorry. I was thinking about collision system, the other one. So what we're going to do is we're going to go collider 2D detected, like I'm going to name it object, like obj. So what this does, it returns a collider 2D, right? Which is this thing, the box collider. So what we can do is if we're detecting something in here, means we have an object. If not, that means it's nothing happening. So we can do is say if obj equals null, else. Let's use this method. Return false, return true. So when the object is null, that means there's nothing. We return false, meaning we didn't detect anything. But what we need to do here is, actually, you know what? Keep it like this. If we're detecting something, we have to get the object of, for example, this is the examine object. We have to take the object of this box collider. And one way of doing this is, let's go detected object equals, and we take this object, obj.get component, obj.game object. That's it. And we have to make sure that we null this value. So as soon as we're not detecting anything, we have to null this detected object equals null, which is good. So right now what we can do here, we have this cached, and we're making sure that as soon as we have this true, meaning we get an object. So instead of the interact, we're going to delete this. What we're going to do is we're going to detect object dot get component item interact. What this means is we're getting this game object, which is the whether the bush or the weird floating thingy, and then we're accessing, we're getting outside of here. We're getting this object and we're accessing the item script, and inside the item script we're calling the interact. And with this we've built ourselves a simple interaction item system. It's still generic, but we're going to enhance it later. So let's give it a test. So in the right one is pickup, and this one is examine. Let's give it a try. Let's walk and click E. It says pickup. That's amazing. Pickup again. Let's go here, examine. So with this, we have ourselves a simple interaction system with a base item mechanics. And I hope you guys and girls liked this and learned something from it. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. And if you have any more questions or concerns or any kind of a feedback, hit the comment below. Also join our Discord channel, which is found and also in the description. And from here, all I say is thank you for your time and see you in the next one. Bye bye.